for listening to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, keeping you up to date with the latest in American soccer. And don't forget to subscribe.
And welcome to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast. I'm Steven Jodarand.
And I'm Jake Watroba.
On today's episode, should MLS come back in 2 weeks? And is Christian Pulisic America's next superstar? Brandon Busbee of the London is Blue podcast joins us to discuss.
Listeners, follow us on Twitter at UncSamSoccerPod. We always enjoy your feedback and comments, so continue to send them in. And don't forget, you can always find the show on any major podcast platform. Now, let's get to today's show. Alrighty, Steven Jodarand.
Yes, sir. We're back-to-back weeks.
We did it. Some say this would never be done again. Silence the doubters, silence the haters. We're back. Back-to-back consecutive weeks. How was your weekend? Good?
Terrible. Nailing my tire. That's always fun. Deal with a flat tire. Burnt my chocolate chip cookies before we're doing this recording on this beautiful Sunday evening. I got Minnesota United on the TV against Sporting KC. I'm happy MLS is playing after the disaster news kind of in the last, Sunday morning where it seemed like cameras are being packed up and COVID, is the league going to shut down? Well, they seem to be moving along, so I don't know. My question is, how much soccer have you watched this weekend?
I've watched my fair share of soccer. I watched a little bit of Juventus Atalanta, probably the best game of the weekend. I watched about the first 70 minutes of Sheffield United Chelsea. Watched a little bit of Red Bulls Atlanta. Some random Premier League games.
USL got back.
I did watch USL. I watched Real Monarchs versus San Diego Loyal, and also Louisville City and Pittsburgh. Watched that earlier today. So yeah, I've watched my fair share of soccer this weekend.
Soccered out.
A little bit, actually.
And then
I've watched so much soccer to the point where I'm like, I'm not even excited that Minnesota United's back because I've watched so much this weekend.
Oh man, what a time to be alive, though. I can't believe we're complaining that there is too much soccer on. I mean, seriously, listeners, are you soccered out? Question of the day: are you soccered out? I mean, there's been so much soccer the last 2 weeks. It's insane. I mean, tomorrow morning or Monday morning, when you and I get ready for our work week, guess what we can flip on? Major League Soccer.
Or if you sleep in to noon, you can flip on the Premier League. Yeah. Well, I think we've been lulled into this. We've gotten used to not having sports on. So now that there's an abundance of sports on, it's like, whoa, this is a lot all at once here. All right, I need to be kind of eased into this, not. My whole day is going to be filled with MLS.
You watched, what's it called? Some USC. I watched some Formula 1 Sunday morning. So there are sports that's slowly coming back. I even turned on rugby for a little bit. The New Zealand League. They had that on ESPN. I think it was Saturday evening. So why not? Sports. We love it. We love to see it, right? Just love to have sports back. And listeners, on today's episode, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about our reaction to MLS is back tournament. How successful has it been so far? Plus, Brandon Busbee of the London is Blue podcast is going to join us. And we're going to talk about Christian Pulisic. We'll see how he fits into this Chelsea side going forward. And obviously, Chelsea in the transfer market. How is that going to affect Pulisic? And is he America's next superstar? We'll define our terms, what we mean by superstar. So stay tuned for that. And Jake, as we just mentioned, soccer. All the European leagues are going on. Wrapping up. It's fantastic. Love it. We're enjoying it. Then you got MLS, USL, NWSL all underway here in America. And since we last recorded, Jake, some pretty big things have happened, at least with Major League Soccer.
Yeah, you can even call them controversial things with Major League Soccer. We saw FC Dallas pull out of the MLS's back tournament. So did Nashville. After 9 players tested positive for coronavirus, Nashville had arrived in the Orlando area for the tournament on July 3rd, with 1 player testing positive upon arrival and 8 others testing positive over the next few days. Chicago Fire.
Wait. We're going to pause there for a second. This baffles me. Why Major League Soccer teams did not arrive with, I don't know, they should have arrived in Orlando a whole month earlier, or at least 3 weeks. I mean, if they're concerned about fitness and tactics, they should have arrived significantly earlier so they had the 2 weeks of quarantine to just isolate any incident of COVID. Because like with FC Dallas, it was testing positive. Like, they got corona before they made it to the bubble. And
right. And what was weird about it, Steven, is, I mean, you look at the NBA. They had 3 dates that these teams in the NBA had to be in Orlando by. It was this July 7th, 8th, and 9th, I think, were the 3 dates. Meanwhile,
I know that.
Well, my Timberwolves are maybe joining the Chicago bubble of the teams that they were relegated out of the Orlando bubble, so they had to go to the Chicago bubble.
What an interesting concept for the NBA. Maybe they'll continue the worst 8 teams. They split the season, go into some sort of relegation promotion battle where they can get relegated to the good teams in the NBA.
The point I'm trying to make is before we go on a tangent of pro rel for NBA, hashtag Ben is it Ben Fast? Is that his name?
Or at Ben Fast, hashtag
at Ben Fast,
pro rel for NBA.
The point I'm trying to make is MLS allowed its teams to show up whenever they wanted, basically.
Stupid. It's dumb. Sorry. That was a terrible decision.
Poorly organized.
I don't know what the thought process was. I don't know. Maybe they thought, well, let's give these players an opportunity to be with their families and have more time to feel comfortable and feel safe. Well, I don't know. I think it kind of caused a problem rather than solving the problem. It caused one. So yeah. Then Chicago Fire moved from Group A on July 9th. It's a little bit unfair.
I don't know if it's necessarily fair, Stephen, but I mean, it had to be done. You had 2 teams that to drop out. This made the most sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, beggars can't be choosers. It's COVID, right? Things are whack. This is a bubble idea, right? It's already strange enough as it is that at this point, who cares? Right?
Yeah. It makes the groups even now. You have 6 groups of 4 rather than 5 groups of 4 and 1 group of 6.
We were complaining originally, why would you have 1 group of 6 teams and 5 groups of 4? It made no sense, right? They did what they could. Now it evened out, so I guess in the long run it worked out. But the wave of news for MLS hasn't been good because Saturday night it continued.
Yeah, we then saw Red Bulls Atlanta. The start time for that match be delayed due to inclement weather, which pushed back Columbus FC Cincinnati even later. Which, if you stayed up and watched FC Cincinnati Columbus, hey, kudos to you for doing that. I don't know why you brought yourself through that unless you were
probably one of the better games.
If you're a Crew fan, yeah.
Hey, Jossie Zardes got his 69th career goal, I believe.
That's nice.
Yes, as somebody would say once on this show, that's nice.
And then, Steven, more troubled waters lied ahead for MLS, though, as we fast forward to this morning. We're recording this Sunday night, as Toronto FC and DC United's match was postponed due to what later was confirmed to be 2 false positive tests amongst the 2 teams.
Oh, man. At that point, I felt skeptical that the tournament would continue on. I really did. I thought the news hasn't been good. You had 2 teams pulled out last week. Games being shifted around. You have terrible weather. The heat is horrendous. Now you have 2 teams who, one showed up to the stadium, the other one stayed back. you have COVID tests that isn't making all that much sense. And yeah, I genuinely didn't think that you and I would be watching Sporting KC play Minnesota United Sunday night. I thought that game would be postponed, and MLS would say, you know what, let's take a 5-day break and resume next week with the normal schedule and kind of figure out things with COVID.
Steven, I did too. I did not think this match between SKC Minnesota would take place, just given the positive test with in the SKC side. You had what was believed earlier this morning. You had 2 tests positive for DC United and Toronto FC. I thought it was going to be this uproar, which there was. Cancel this tournament. This is ridiculous. MLS has no clue what it's doing. And I think that kind of just highlights where we are as a society, where everything is just taken to the most extreme. And we later find out that both these players tested negative. It was a false positive. And I don't know, man. After seeing that, it rubbed me the wrong way when I saw people talk about how crappy MLS is for doing this tournament. I mean, if you're going to call them out for having these positive tests, well, then maybe you should also, applaud them for taking the due process there and making sure that these people these players aren't testing positive. To me, it almost feels like there's a lot of people within U.S. Soccer Twitter that are almost rooting for players to get infected with corona. I feel like they're rooting for players to get coronavirus because they want to stroke their ego to say, see, I was right. This tournament shouldn't have happened. You have all these players testing positive. It gets old after the 14th day of seeing it. I'm just sorry. Or however many days we are into players being down in Orlando. It gets old. So
we're going to get to a reaction to the broadcast, what we think of the quality of play. But let me ask you this, Jake. Listeners, chime in at Uncle Sam Soccer Pod. Did MLS do the right thing and postpone the match? Yes, we all agree that. But is MLS doing the right thing where they're postponing the matches that have question marks regarding COVID, and the matches that don't have question marks, they continue on?
I think they are. I think they're doing. I think. Look, the situation here in Orlando, it's less than ideal, obviously. But if you have teams that aren't testing positive, yeah, they should play. Why should that be of any concern? Why should it be of any concern to New York Red Bulls Atlanta that FC Dallas had positive tests or Nashville had positive tests? Why should that be any concern to them? They're not in the same club. They're not interacting with those players. Everyone's being separated, so I'm told. So, no, I don't think the show should go on. I mean, this is what the experts recommended for sports to return. Get in a bubble. Yeah. So what are we doing here now? I mean, this is what the experts want, and now all of a sudden, well, this isn't good enough. What is it? I don't want to get in a soapbox here and take this. What we do, Steven, at Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, we operate inside the toy department, aka sports. And I don't want to take this out of the toy department, so to say. Yeah. But all I'm saying is this was what the experts recommended. MLS, NBA have now done that, and now there's a backlash.
Well, so this is going to be really interesting to see is what's going to happen to the NBA, right? Are there going to be COVID cases? And if there are COVID cases, are people going to demand that league shut down like they are demanding with MLS? Let's see if it's consistent enough. And I also am curious to know is how much press do you think MLS has really gotten regarding the players testing positive for COVID? Obviously, they kicked the 2 teams out. That kind of like, well, most people in sports were like, okay, well, they're done. Okay, they're gone. Resume play. Predictively, that's what the conversation has been. I don't know in the larger scheme of things, people who don't care for sports or who want to criticize for sports for coming back during COVID in the backdrop that Florida shatters largest single-day record of coronavirus infections on Sunday. I mean, there's a lot of criticism, but as you said, the show goes on. So far, I don't know. Are players complaining? Have you seen any player complaints? Earlier there was, but I'm not too sure. I think a lot of them are pretty happy to be playing and getting back to their day jobs. It must be a welcome relief for some of these players.
I would agree, unless you believe what you read on the MLS Insider Inside the Bubble Twitter account, whatever that Twitter page is called. Unless you believe that account, which I'm not so sure the information that account is pushing out there on Twitter is very accurate to begin with. Yeah, I would say that there's probably, I mean, like I said, the situation isn't ideal, but I think the players are probably happy to some extent to kind of get back into the swing of things, into doing something, a profession that they, have strived or, worked their whole lives for. I think that they're happy to get back out on the field and kind of resume this sense of a little bit of normalcy in their life amongst this pandemic.
Absolutely. Now, games wise, broadcast, what are you thinking? Good, bad? Do you like the logos? Do you like the Adidas logo at midfield?
The Adidas logo is very down. It's far down on the list of complaints I have about this tournament. I'll just say that. So the Adidas logo doesn't bother me. I for the life of me can't watch soccer when there's no crowd noise. It drives me up a wall. I don't care to hear players yell at each other. It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't give me a glimpse like, oh, look at this tactically. So and so is yelling at so and so. Oh man, it's so cool. Like, no, that not for me. I need a little bit of fake pumped in crowd noise. I don't need anything crazy like the Bundesliga is doing.
It was night and day. It was night and day when Fox broadcast did the fake crowd noise with Atlanta Red Bulls versus Montreal Revs on Thursday night. Night and day. Like it felt, for some reason, maybe the game was right, and I just don't remember. I'd have to watch side by side the Revs game and the Atlanta Red Bulls Revs and Montreal game side by side to determine if the quality of play was faster. But it felt faster in the Red Bulls Atlanta game, and I don't know if it just was a placebo effect with the crowd noise, but it felt faster. Well, it felt more genuine.
I mean, those two teams are also two of the better teams in the Eastern Conference and in MLS.
I will argue the Revs are a dark horse in this tournament. Bruce Arena, one of the most successful coaches in MLS. Gustavo Bo, one of the most underrated DP signings in the last couple of years. He has the fourth most goals since coming into league, behind Ibrahimovic, Vela, and Joseph Martinez. He is a goal-scoring machine. He could take the Revs on his back to the final or a deep run in semifinals. Just remember, this is tournament football. Bruce Arena is familiar with MLS Cup playoffs. This is not a marathon, guys. MLS's back is not a marathon. It's a sprint. And some teams are going to take the sprint more seriously than the others. But the broadcast...
Survive in advance, right?
Yeah, survive in advance. Really, it really is. And the broadcast of the game with the crowd noise was better. I liked it. And I think you agree, too. Now, let me ask you this, Jake. I didn't want to... Sorry for stepping over you, but what do you make of the weather? Was Orlando really a good choice? Like, obviously, this is why they're playing games at 9 a.m. and 9 a.m. Central and 7 o'clock Central Time p.m. So they're trying to avoid the heat of the day by playing the games early morning or late at night.
Look, Steven, I think the weather is definitely having an impact on these games. I mean, in Orlando, it's upper 80s, lower 90s, 60, 70% humidity. I mean, look, it's definitely not as hot as it could be if you were playing, I guess we'll compare it to the NWSL playing in, Salt Lake City where it's in the mid 90s. But the thing with that is there's virtually no humidity. And as somebody who lives in the upper Midwest and who also lived in Dallas, Texas, humidity when that humidity gets above 60%, you're sweating as soon as you walk out. You feel wet as soon as you walk outside. Yep. And I think that on top of the players being off for 3-4 months, I think that is having a negative impact on the play in Orlando. So I think we should hold off a little bit on our judgment of these players, of these teams, of this tournament for maybe another week or two before we, start to really assess the play and these teams. Because, like I said, 3 to 4 months off, you have this weather kind of is crap for playing soccer. I mean, let's remember they play soccer in the winter over in Europe. They don't do it at this time of the year. There's a reason why. It's not ideal. So I think we should hold off on our judgment and kind of wait and see here the next couple of weeks. But Coming up next, we have Brandon Busbee of the London is Blue podcast to talk all things Chelsea and Christian Pulisic. Joining us now is the host of the London is Blue podcast. It is Brandon Busbee. You can follow Brandon on Twitter at @BBBusbee. Brandon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Context would help. Chelsea got pummeled yesterday, but then Leicester got pummeled today. So if Cass comes through and somehow Southampton come through, it could be a hell of a weekend.
Listeners, as we teased at the top, we're going to talk about Christian Pulisic and how he fits into Chelsea and whether or not he's the next superstar. But Brandon, I have to say, Christian Pulisic has been electric. He has caught fire. People in just large context sports media are talking about Christian Pulisic. Just give us your thoughts on what this young player has, how he has performed the last couple of weeks, especially since the restart.
Absolutely. He is fulfilling all of the potential, the price tag, the American hype that we sent with him from Dortmund to Chelsea a little over a year ago when we signed him in January. And it's really been great to see kind of this season will go down no matter what as a success for him. And I think that was really important. From our perspective as Americans that are also Chelsea fans. We wanted to see him come in and have a good season to kind of set a foundation, good enough that if the season ticket holders, the locals there, could accept an American as a key player for the team because of what he did on the pitch and not, the whole marketing argument, which was silly. It would be a success. And I think that's where we're at, like with his overall production, knowing that he's had injuries. He didn't start for a couple months. This has been a wild success for Christian.
Yeah, and Brendan, you mentioned that he didn't start for a few months at the beginning of the season, but you look at his numbers and compare him to his first two seasons with Dortmund. He's got 8 goals this year for Chelsea. That's twice as many as he had in 2017, 2018 with Dortmund. He had 4 goals then, and then he had 4 goals the following season as well. So I guess the question I have for you is, what changed for Christian Pulisic? Because it really seems like I watch him now versus when I watched him in the fall. Completely different player.
Right. Yeah. I think he's not the only one, but he's healthy. I think he's adjusted to the Premier League. He understands what this league is about and the style it's played because it's very different than the Bundesliga.
Right.
I think that he's also benefited from a really good Ross Barkley for the last few matches, a really good Willian for the last few matches. And I think, at least in the restart, that's where he's been able to come back so fit, so sharp, so ready. And that's just a testament down to him working out. I can't remember if it was the Chelsea Reddit or somewhere, but someone who lives right around Hershey, where he was home during this shutdown of the Premier League. Was. Yeah, he came back to the States. He got permission, and they said he would train every single day for 3 hours, and it's showing. And it's just it's a signal to him and his work ethic and his desire to succeed at every level he's at, whether it's the men's national team, being the captain as a child. Or going from Dortmund to Chelsea, commercially one of the biggest teams in the world. So you have a lot of pressure and eyes like that. The kid has put in the work. He's healthy. And now we're starting to see what a healthy, settled Christian Pulisic can do in the Premier League for Chelsea. And this should be no surprise to all of your listeners. He's direct. He doesn't waste touches or runs going away from goal. And he can get a shot off in an instant that catches defenders off guard.
You said something interesting there. Talked about the benefits of having a healthy Ross Barkley and obviously William. I wonder if Greg Berhalter is taking notice in how Christian Pulisic is performing at Chelsea. And this is a big question I have with the U.S. men's national team is, what is Greg Berhalter going to have for Christian Pulisic and the cast of characters that he's going to put around the star player here. Is he going to put Christian Pulisic in his best position, or is he going to utilize Christian Pulisic and what he thinks is best for Greg Berhalter's system? And that'll be a fascinating conversation as Christian Pulisic grows. But Brandon, what I wonder is this a lightning strike in the bottle? Is Frank Lampard being won over by Christian Pulisic? Is Pulisic's job security safe in light of the transfer rumors that Chelsea want to go out there and splurge?
Yeah. So, look, if you're not familiar, our podcast, we have done a really good job of making friends across the pond and making friends with people around the club. And so, what we've been told is that Christian has really impressed, even from day one, Frank Lampard, with his. I mean, the kid is laser focused on football. So when Chelsea signed him, we were talking to the marketing department because obviously we're like, when can we interview him? Still waiting. They were like, yeah, we've got this huge marketing plan ready. Nothing happened. So we went over to London in late September last year, and we got to go to the training ground, and we interviewed, some other players, and we're asking the Chelsea employee about Christian. I'm like, what happened to all this stuff? And they're like, he won't. He refuses to do anything. If it's not training, rehab, film, getting better, he told us he refuses to do anything until he's an established player. And the three of us just looked at each other and we're like, that's my man. Like, all right, like, let's go. That's all he wanted to do. He didn't want to do the campaigns. He didn't want to do the marketing. Obviously he did the basics, but they wanted to splash him everywhere, and he wasn't having any of it. And so I think that, he created a really good relationship with Frank early on. He expressed to Christian that you need to be patient. Like, trust me, we're going to play the long run here. And I know a lot of people compared it to Fabinho and Klopp. Fabinho didn't play for 3 months and then, now as a massive player for their team. So, in that sense, I think that, Frank has a lot of trust and really likes what Christian has to bring. And when Chelsea are going out and signing the Ajax player of the season for 2 or 3 years running, and Hakim Ziyech, who's one of the most productive, creative players in Europe in the last 5 years, and then they go and sign Timo Werner, who's a striker but can play out wide a little bit, all of a sudden you're like, uh-oh, what's going to happen to him? But you have to remember, Pedro and Willian are going. That opens up spots for everyone. Callum Hudson-Odoi hasn't kicked on like we thought after he signed his mega contract. He's barely featured this season, and that was like the big concern, was him and Christian going head to head. So Christian has firmly planted himself at the top of Chelsea's pecking order and wide attacking players. I think no matter who we sign.
Was this a development that has been solidified the last few weeks with his just ability to score important goals for Chelsea as they're pushing for the Champions League? Or do you think this has been, obviously, as you mentioned, the long run under Frank Lampard, but has this been in Frank Lampard's mind, and he, regardless of how Christian Pulisic has performed here in the last couple of weeks, that it was already, he already solidified his, I guess, place in the starting 11, at least making match day squads if he's hurt or coming off the bench in the long run?
Well, I think this is just validation to Frank, and that's the way it is with any player. If you come on, and fulfill the potential you have with the end product. Tammy Abraham did it for 3.5 months this season. Not anymore, and so you have to ask questions. But right now, Christian is scoring, creating assists through penalties, getting his own assists, and he's just fulfilling what the coach sees in him. And that's all you can do is add the end product. So, it's probably a little bit of all of that, and look, will he maintain scoring, every 3 out of 4 matches week in, week out next season? No. But he's settling in and he's comfortable competing at this level. And we've already seen teams. It took them 2 weeks of Christian being, magnificent on the ball to start hacking him down. All right. He's already getting the Eden Hazard treatment of, hack a Shack out there. And that's because teams don't want him running at them with the ball.
Scary.
So, Brandon, I want to ask you this, because with Pulisic's form as of late, I've seen a lot of people on Twitter commenting about it, people who don't even follow soccer who are commenting about it. And it got me thinking, and it got Steven thinking as well. We were kind of discussing amongst each other about, is he going to go to like Barcelona or Real Madrid later in his career? Like, is that the next step for him? But then it also spurred another idea or another thought in our heads here of, is he America's next big superstar? And what we mean by that is he going to, when people, outside of the U.S., when they think of U.S. sports, I mean, right now it's LeBron James, it's Tom Brady, it was Michael Jordan at one point in time. It's guys like that. But a star that we thought was comparable, because you can argue how you can say soccer's niche in this country. Well, the connection we made was Lance Armstrong. And granted, Lance Armstrong, he doped and all that stuff, yada, yada. We understand that. But Lance Armstrong... Everybody
knows who Lance Armstrong is.
Megastar. Especially in this country. I mean, he's a cyclist. Who cares about cycling in this country? We'd like to get your thoughts on that. Do you think that this is potential for Christian to be held in that regard as a Lance Armstrong, if he were to become the face of a club like Chelsea, or would even go on to play for an even bigger club like Barcelona or Bayern Munich or whomever?
Look, I think he has all the potential in the world. So 2 reasons why that might not happen. 1, he's a team sport player. Lance was an individual sport, Tiger, individual sport athlete. So their success was predicated upon themselves. Christian is at the mercy of Chelsea, right or wrong. But if he were to be by far and away one of our best players and Chelsea are in the Champions League, I think he has that opportunity to be the shining light of all Americans to say, look, we have a player who's one of the best in your league. Look at that. We knew we could do it. We just didn't know how. So I think that's one of the flip side, the 2 sides of that coin flip. The other one is it's up to him. If I'm being honest, I don't think he wants to be. Michael Jordan was a lot more open to marketing campaigns. LeBron, marketing campaigns, Lance Armstrong, he soaked it up, live strong. I mean, we all had the yellow, bracelet. Christian's not into that. Like, he doesn't care about money and marketing partnerships. He just wants to succeed on the field. So I think that the way it happens is not through marketing and media campaigns, but again, just from him genuinely being one of the best players in Europe, in England, in the most competitive league in the world. And it's just an automatic argument. Done. And then obviously, hopefully the U.S. men's national team will get its act together and, he can have a stage at the world level.
Yeah. It is interesting that how Christian Pulisic, he's clearly very young, that he's not very, for better or worse, he's not very image conscious. He's just focused on his game, which is fantastic. That is every sports person's dream right there, is to look up to an athlete who doesn't care about the fame, doesn't care about the money, who's going to represent the local team, the local fans, on the pitch, and be a representation of whatever team it is, right? But I will say that as players grow older, they become a little more business oriented, and suddenly the business, the marketing does matter. Tom Brady, for a large part of his career, didn't care about his image. It wasn't until the last 6 years where he's eating his avocado ice cream and selling $90 nuts and concussion water that his image suddenly mattered. So yeah, you're right. Now it's great. That's everyone's dream. And I think Christian Pulisic is starting to make headway, because in some sense he's like the first American, right, to break the ice for some reason. And Clint Dempsey had a very successful run in the Premier League. Tim Howard had a very successful run, but they don't have the same weight. Their names just didn't carry the same weight that Christian Pulisic does now at Chelsea.
Yeah, for sure. And again, my only way I predict this happening, and it can, is if he is just undisputed one of the best soccer players in the world, and then the media will put him on that pedestal and make him that icon.
Yeah.
But he's not going to go out and play like do a Neymar strategy where he's well, actually Christian would love to play Fortnite with Ninja. From what I'm told, he plays Fortnite just all the time.
I see the likes on Instagram with liking Ninja or other Fortnite players posts. I see that. You're right. I agree with that take.
Yeah. So I guess that's a bad example, but he's not going to do all those collabs and partnerships and things like that. It'll be the media and the U.S. men's national team community, AO, everyone like yourselves, just exclaiming to the world that he is an absolute superstar. And then the media will pick it up, and he'll essentially, be amongst the top echelon of players. And it's great to see those mainstream players, all of these NBA players, these NFL players are really starting to pick soccer teams. And it's an easy way to just follow Christian wherever he goes. And right now it's Chelsea. And so it's been, that will only prop him up because all these other professional athletes are going to be pointing at him as well.
LeBron James did have a Christian Pulisic jersey, U.S. men's national team, on an Instagram post, I would say a year and a half back. So, he's making noise within the sports community. It might not be as public as some people might imagine, but I think the American athlete at the top knows who Christian Pulisic is, and I think a lot of them look at him and go like, damn, I wish I had his stage. Because if Christian Pulisic breaks into the mold of a Messi, Ronaldo, no American athlete will be able to compare to him, because not only does he hold the American audience at hostage because they're going to follow him and see every moment he does, he's going to have the world's attention, whether it is players in Asia or fans in Asia, Africa, or in Latin America or wherever. People are going to tune in because he plays for the biggest club, just like Neymar or Messi or Ronaldo. Despite that they're Portuguese, Argentinian, or Brazilian, everybody knows who they are.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And again, he's such a likable person. He's such a hometown hero. He is the guy that you can support because he's so humble, down to earth, considers himself to be the most average person in the world, even though he has some of the most exceptional skills in this sport, that we all love. So yeah, he's very easy to like as well. He's not a villain. He's not cocky. If anything, we're mad at him because he doesn't give us more access.
Oh, yeah.
And then, Brandon, one last question here before we let you go. Not Christian Pulisic related. Since you and I are the Chelsea fans here on the show currently, question for you. Will they qualify for the Champions League next year? I know there's you mentioned, obviously, with the Leicester loss today, we're hoping for a Man United loss tomorrow. Things are getting kind of tight there, at the top of the table. Will they qualify for Europe next year?
Obviously, my heart is yelling yes. I've worked out all the different scenarios that it can happen, and it can. If we win out, it'll happen. But I know that Liverpool would love to throw a wrench in that after Slippy G a few years ago and their run to the title. And then we obviously have to play, Wolves the last match of the season. So I think it's closer to probably a 50-50 chance. The biggest factor going into this is going to be that CAS ruling, which we think will be coming out Monday. So obviously, if that rules in favor of the world, and Manchester City have some ban, at least one season, then I feel really good about making top four. If it doesn't, and now there's 3 teams vying for 2 places, I'm a lot closer to 50-50. So
don't forget Leicester play United final day or the final match day. And that, again, depending on the ruling, Leicester City, who have fallen off a cliff, could also, that could definitely come into play. You could have, I guess, Chelsea and Man United leapfrog Leicester City, which at the beginning of play here in the restart, people thought, Leicester City's pretty safe there. They played, they could lose the games against the big boys, quote unquote big boys, but if they take care of business, they'll be fine. And look what situation they're in now. So yeah, it'll be fascinating. I think, as you mentioned, by the time this podcast releases, I'm assuming the news regarding City supposedly will come out, and as you mentioned, the world is all ruling for the same conclusion. Ban them for one season, please. Enough of Manchester City.
So it's what the people need to hear.
Yes.
They need to hear that we got a fighting chance, as I say that with a Russian billionaire owner who is apparently ready to splash all the cash right now. So,
yeah, why not? Anyway, Brandon, we appreciate your time. Tell the listeners where we can find your fantastic podcast and where we can follow you on Twitter.
Absolutely. So the podcast is London is Blue. On social media, our handle is London Blue Pod. But yeah, if you just search London is Blue, you'll find us in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you listen. And we'd love to chat Christian Pulisic with you guys on Twitter, Instagram, whatever you want to do. And then, my links personally are there too, but don't worry about that.
Appreciate it, Brandon. Take care.
Yeah, absolutely. Loved it.
Wow, big thank you for Brandon for joining us, talking some Christian Pulisic, Chelsea, U.S. men's national team, although we really talked much U.S. men's national team. But Jake, final thoughts for the show. We really didn't talk much about MLS is back, and I think, as you alluded to at the end there, just before we talked to Brandon, it's just more so like, what is there to recap? At the moment, things are going are a bit strange. Obviously, coronavirus is still very much prevalent and out there. It's having an impact on society at large. And these players haven't played for months. It's heavy-legged. So, I could say like the Revs could be a dark horse team, but this tournament, past the group stage doesn't have any impact on the regular season. So a team's going to win this tournament. They're going to get in the Champions League, but we really can't respond. We can respond to the gameplay, but I just think it's unfair.
Yeah, Steven. I mean, this whole, and the other weird thing too. I mean, speaking about being unfair, it's like for the few teams that don't qualify to the knockout stages, they just go back home and then they wait for games to resume in a couple of weeks.
And do we have a definitive answer on what that's going to look like and how that's going to come back?
We don't even know the schedule. We don't know if they're going to allow players or teams to play games in their home markets, or if there's going to be more hub cities, or how that whole thing is going to look. I mean, everything is pretty murky with this league after this tournament's over.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
will there even be a season after this tournament's over?
But here's the thing: is you have to ask yourself this too. If you're going to tactically break down some of these games, fine, break them on a game-to-game basis. But you can't sit there and go say like, well, this is going to be the style the Revs are going to play for the regular season. Why? Because this is a tournament. You're playing to get out of the group stage.
Yeah, it's survive in advance.
It's survive in advance. You win the first game of your of the group stage play, and you're statistically very likely to move on. Especially when you have a chance of four of the best third place teams survive. So you can win one game and lose the other two, and just have enough to squeak by to the knockout stage. So Anyway. Listeners, give us your thoughts on MLS back. Question of the day, are you soccered out? Jake said yes. I'm a little bit soccered out, but I don't mind it. I am not complaining. I'm happy. And Christian Pulisic, I do think he can be the superstar that everyone says he is. I know Brandon thought just a little bit otherwise regarding his image. And I think Christian Pulisic will eventually change as he gets older, as he starts to see the dollar signs and business opportunities left and right, because there's no athlete as they grow into the career with the status that Christian Pulisic could potentially have does not sit there and says, well, I can make $1 billion doing this.
Yeah, I think eventually Christian Pulisic will understand his brand and understand the things he can do to monetize his image more than he is right now. And I think that'll happen eventually. I don't think Christian Pulisic is, from a personality wise, I don't know if he's all that interesting. He's not like a Joel Embiid. I mean, Joel Embiid's interesting, right? If we're gonna talk about personalities, that guy's out there. I mean, look, he went to Orlando in a hazmat suit for crying out loud. I don't see Christian Pulisic doing stuff like that. But I think eventually
Pulisic is also 21 years old.
Joel Embiid's not that much older.
Well, yeah,
but I think eventually,
yeah, sure,
we might see Christian Pulisic in more Gatorade commercials or more Nike commercials and stuff like
25. Like, he's 21. The world is still new to this guy. So Yeah. Ultimately, it's just a waiting game, and we'll see. I mean, quite frankly, he can make $500 million, but if he doesn't succeed with the U.S. men's national team and succeed at the club level, I'm not that interested. We're sports people here. We care about wins and losses. And with that, listeners, follow us at Uncle Sam Soccer Pod. Go listen to the London is Blue podcast. They definitely talk a lot about Christian Pulisic, and you'll definitely get a lot better insight regarding his form at Chelsea than you would hear on the show, especially with USL, NWSL, and MLS all in action. Follow myself at Stephen Jotter, and give a big shout out to at Jake Watrova for having to stick through Minnesota sports. I had a deep conversation with Jake not too long ago about the heartbreak Minnesota sports has given him. So it's fascinating. Anyway, listeners, until next time.